I was looking back on a couple of the videos I've made, and I realized I never made a video talking about this. I came close, but I never really talked about my own personal thoughts with it. If you read the title, you know what to expect. I love Sonic 06. This isn't a satire video. This isn't a gag. This isn't some long-running joke or bit that I've done throughout countless different videos. This is something I truly feel for this game. I love Sonic 06. I'm not making this video to convince you to also love Sonic 06. I'm not making this video to convince you that it's a good game either, because I'm well aware it's not. It's not the best Sonic game of all time. It's not a top 5 Sonic game of all time. It's not even a well-polished Sonic game. The gameplay isn't even all that fantastic. There's just so many things wrong with Sonic 06. But I think to really love something, you have to appreciate and recognize its flaws. I'm well aware that Sonic 06 is not a good game. I'm well aware that Sonic 06 needs lots of work. But even still, I love this game. I'm not going to sit here and argue that the game was ahead of its time or that it's misunderstood either. I'm just going to tell you honestly and truly, this is a game that I feel very passionate about. Now, if you don't mind, I would like a moment of your time to explain just why I love Sonic 06. And then maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. My first Sonic game was Sonic Heroes on the PS2. It wasn't my first encounter with Sonic though. My first encounter with Sonic was Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games on the Wii. That was the first time I'd ever seen Sonic, and I was like, who is he? Why is he so cool? Before then, I'd only known the Mario world, so Sonic was a really foreign character to me. So I had wanted to try out a Sonic game for I don't know how long at that point, and I saw Sonic Heroes at Dave & Buster's, and I decided that that was my goal. I saved up all my tickets, I got to play it, I had a PS2, so I played it on that, and I really liked it, but there were some problems. My PS2 wasn't the cleanest or fastest running console I had in my house. The controllers were always an issue, and the game itself was a little bit too hard for me. I really liked using Team Dark, but the tougher enemies just made it really hard to get through the story, so I never did. I never beat Sonic Heroes on the PS2 as a kid. It wouldn't be years later when I would get the game on the GameCube when I go back and replay it and then beat it. But even when I was replaying it at that point, I understood why I couldn't handle it when I was a kid. The game can be a little unforgiving. And by a little, I meant a lot. With Sonic Heroes when I was younger, oftentimes I just find myself playing the game with my brother, and we'd just run up multiplayer together. And that's the most I would really get out of Sonic Heroes. The story was always something that I was like, oh, I really want to do it, but I didn't have the strength to. I would then go on to play other games like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Adventure, and those games would capture me, even though I couldn't complete them to their entirety once more. Then, eventually, I would go around to getting Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. This was the first Sonic game that I ever completed. And at this point, you probably think, okay, SONICSTA likes Sonic 06 because he's nostalgic for it. It's the first Sonic game he ever completed. It makes sense why he loves the game so much. But I think that's only part of the reason why I love Sonic 06. I'm not going to deny you, I do think nostalgia plays a big role into why I really like this game. But there's more to it than just that. You see, something Sonic 06 had that I really thought was so cool, and even now to this day still think is cool, is just how serious the game takes itself. When it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog in general, when the series tells a serious story, I always find it to be so cool. Because you're taking these fundamentally silly looking characters and putting them into an environment where there's heavy stakes. The world is going to end. They're facing these monsters that even my own mind cannot comprehend. And, you know, if not for these silly looking cartoon characters, everyone would just die, or the world would come to an end. Now, a lot of Sonic games have this tone, and to be quite honest with you, a few of them just do it better than Sonic 06. But I think the way Sonic 06 tells a story within not just Sonic, but the other characters who are around him, make it really compelling for me. With Sonic 06, we have the introduction of the character Silver the Hedgehog, and with Silver, his story is unique, where he comes from the future, a world that is ruined and destroyed because of someone known as the Iblis Trigger. This person unleashed Iblis upon the world and caused total destruction. Silver is tasked by an ominous figure to go back in time and kill the Iblis Trigger. However, this Iblis Trigger is Sonic the Hedgehog, someone we know is likely on the good side of things if you know this character. As Silver unknowingly gets closer to Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend, he begins to have doubts. There's conflict within him for those of you who are Star Wars fans. To Silver's knowledge, all he has to do is kill Sonic and then the world is saved. That's the information that Memphis left him to go off of. But for some reason, he can't seem to bring himself to do it. Not to be that guy or anything, but if Silver really wanted to kill Sonic in their first encounter, he could have so easily just thrown Amy out of the way and just done away with him. But almost immediately after their conversation, Silver is kind of thrown into a tizzy. He doesn't know what the right thing to do anymore after feeling so strongly convicted. Silver is such a well-layered character in Sonic 06. I love Silver in Sonic 06. I think Shadow the Hedgehog is yet another character in this game who really stands out. Shadow's story is a bit different than Silver's because unlike Silver, Shadow's resolve is pretty much unshakable throughout. Throughout the game, Memphis is trying to get Shadow to go back on his resolve and essentially destroy the world before the world destroys him. Memphis claims that he has seen the future and that the world will choose to make an enemy of Shadow in the end, and Shadow strongly says,
"If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have."
06 to me is a game that just has so much aura, and this moment, I don't know, in my opinion I think it's the best Shadow the Hedgehog moment in the entire franchise, but also one of the coolest moments of Sonic the Hedgehog in general. Sonic 06 I think is one of the best portrayals of just about every single one of these characters, and I think Sonic's character gets a lot of flack because he spends so much time with Elise, but even then, I still think Sonic's character is really good in this game. It's just not at its best. In games like Sonic Unleashed, The Black Knight, and even the adventure games, I think that's where Sonic really takes the cake. But in this game with the Sonic and Elise love interest, this is also an area where I think the game could have done without. I don't think Elise on her own is really a bad character. I think she's also multi-layered. I think there are definitely different things going on there with her and the idea of her father telling her not to ever cry as a child for reasons we understand, but that is a lot to ask for of like a maybe 6-year-old kid at the time. But Sonic coming in and being that light for Elise and showing her that she's allowed to express herself and allowed to be more than just the princess of Soliana, I think is really moving for Sonic as a character and also for Elise. Now Sonic, like in many other games, doesn't have much character development, which is perfectly fine. I don't need Sonic having character development. That's not something I'm ever going to ask for from this character, as he's always been someone who just seems to move others. But the way Sonic is utilized in this game, I think gets so much hate, but he's literally doing the same thing he's done before in other Sonic titles with the romance aspect added to it, which that part I think is the area in which could probably use some work. But outside of that, I think Sonic 06 is just one of those games that really gets these characters down really well, and it was fun to watch and experience when I was younger playing it, and even to this very day. And I talked a little bit about aura earlier in the video when I talked about Shadow the Hedgehog in that one scene, but I think another character who deserves to be talked about for just aura points alone is Memphis. I think Memphis has got to be one of the most interesting yet disturbing Sonic the Hedgehog villains of all time. Even before Sonic 06, Sonic is no stranger to fighting against massive kaiju. He's always taking down this giant monster that seems to be able to destroy the world in just one fell swoop. We even got that back with games like Sonic Frontiers and Sonic X Shadow Generations, where Shadow had his opportunity to do that as well. But this is one of the few Sonic games where the kaiju monster actually doesn't take the cake, because Sonic 06 does have that with Iblis. We do have a monster that could just totally wipe out a city in one fell swoop. But Memphis, he's not like that. He looks just like the other hedgehogs do. He looks just like Shadow. When it comes to a character like Memphis, not only is he not quite like the other villain in this game, Iblis, where he's this kaiju monster that can wipe everything out, but Memphis has that aura about him. Like, I feel like he's one of the most imposing Sonic the Hedgehog villains, even though he never fights Sonic. Feel free to correct me in the comment section down below on this, but I also believe that Sonic 06 is the only Sonic game where Sonic is not the target of the villains. Yes, I'm aware that Memphis is the one who kills Sonic the Hedgehog in Sonic 06, but even still, throughout the entirety of the game, Sonic has no idea about his existence, or doesn't really seem to care. Sonic ends up fighting Iblis once, but even then, it's not something that he does on his own or because he really wants to. He ends up fighting them with Team Dark. Iblis is not really a Sonic the Hedgehog villain and more of a Silver villain, and Memphis is more of a Shadow villain than he is a Sonic villain. So who is Sonic facing in this game? I guess the only person left is really Eggman. Sonic is facing Eggman, but also the doubts Elise believes about herself. Now, that sounds like really deep and makes you maybe want to roll your eyes, but that's just the truth. Throughout the entirety of the game where Elise gets kidnapped by Eggman over and over again, Sonic is constantly reminding her in some way, shape, or form that she's worth more than everything she's always thought she was. I used to really hate characters like Elise and Chris Thorndike when I was growing up, and it wasn't until relatively recently where I gained a new appreciation for them and what they do for Sonic as a character. A lot of people, myself included, hated Elise because of her relationship with Sonic, but if you really take the blinders off and ignore that there's a relationship going on there, you can understand that this character is really multi-layered. Ignoring the relationship that the two characters had, I'm able to have a deeper understanding and appreciation for this character. What I did with Elise's character is kind of what I had to do with the entirety of 06, even now when I go back and replay it. The gameplay to me is fun, even though it's not fantastic. And the story itself, I find to be just magnificent, even if it isn't the most well-written thing ever, or even the most well-written Sonic game ever. But here's the thing, for me it was just taking the blinders off and really just recognizing what the game tried to do. And I know that the idea of the game trying to do something is not as good as what it actually is, like the execution will always beat the attempt, but even still, I really appreciate both the execution and the attempt. It may not be terrific, but it is a game that I hold near and dear to my heart because of it. Hopefully you guys have a better understanding of where I'm coming from when I say that I love Sonic 06. In my opinion, even those tedious high-speed sections that could be really annoying, I think are just such a blast and should return in this franchise. Maybe, of course, better produced. Then of course there's the music of Sonic 06, which I didn't even talk about, but I don't think really needs much conversation. I think everyone can recognize that 06 probably has the best soundtrack out of every single Sonic game. If you disagree, feel free to argue with the wall, but having said all that, let me know all of your thoughts on the game in the comment section down below. Anyway, this is your boy Sonic signing out. Have a super blessed day, y'all.
Why are you playing that trash?